right, I turned the recording thing on, so not like last time. I lost most of the last lecture. I only got like the last 40.
Oh, what's that thing hanging from the beam behind you?
Oh, that's my jester's staff.
Oh, now I see. Okay, now I recognize it. Okay.
That's the, if you watch, you've seen the It Me Kingdoms Philosophy Monsters. This is the jester.
Yeah.
I took his image and actually animated it.
Wow.
So this is the item that's in the cartoon. It was based off this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I like that. I got another one written. I haven't done the recording yet.
I wonder where that other picture came from. I don't want to click on it.
It could be like some weird pop-up.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, your face is way at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be walking and talking for this
Oh,
one.
okay.
So I'm gathering my strength.
Okay, see, I'm the director.
You got good stage presence.
Okay, I see. Do you see what I see? It just says Joseph.
Yep. So you got.
Okay.
So if it keeps switching between different views, you could always click the view button and select gallery, and that shows everybody at the same time. That's the one I usually have on.
Oh, okay.
If you want it to switch back and forth, you would select speaker view, and that's the one that puts whoever's talking on the video.
Now, how cold is it where you are?
It's pretty cold.
We got up to 40 degrees today.
We were up to. We were, what were we? We went down to 20 degrees.
Yeah, we were in the 20s. We've had snow. It hasn't snowed for a few days, but we had snow, boy. I just, keep hoping we don't lose power.
All right. I guess I'm going to get this thing rolling. Get my water.
Oh, I didn't have to type that code in.
Oh, cool. All right. So today I'm going to be talking about the language of consciousness. And that's a pretty loaded statement right there. The language of consciousness. There's a lot that's being assumed with that sentence. Number one, it assumes that consciousness is capable of understanding speech. It understands consciousness is able to not only do this, but to do this in ways that can connect with other people who are doing the same thing, or to connect with other people who are trying to do the same thing and think they might be, but actually are doing things completely differently. And they just happen to meet at the same place at the same time, and they chalk it all up to, well, this person just sees the world exactly the same way I do. And they don't see that both of you took these incredibly zigzagging paths that took you past very different ideas to reach that same point. So you could have seen this, and this person could have seen that. And just because you were there in that moment doesn't mean that either one of you has seen anything except this moment. And that's all you have to go on. So all of that just gets backfilled if you think of consciousness that way. So anyways, so that's the first thing. For me, my theory of consciousness is that it's a sentient thing. Okay, it's a life form. Call it the soul. Call it whatever you want. But because I can't tell you what it is, I can only tell you how it behaves. So how it behaves is making me guess at what it is. So I'll make my case for how it behaves, and you tell me if it doesn't make sense that I say this is what it is. So consciousness, it has properties of life. Consciousness, at its most fundamental level, is the ability to make a comparison. a deliberation, a separation. It can say this is more than, this is less than, this is equivalent to, these are opposites, this is better, this is worse. It's the ability to make a determination. You could take that to computer language, and is it a 1 or is it a 0? That's kind of how it how it how it begins. So when I look at consciousness, you see that there are different kinds. Because if consciousness comes from people, then and we all kind of can interact with each other, and all of us understands consciousness differently, and all of us are conscious, then the only explanation that makes sense for that is if you take one person in one moment and you take another person in the same moment, both of those people may not have the same size consciousness. They'll certainly be different, whether or not the size is the same or not. And most of that might just be because this person is 30 years old and this person is 7. And they happen to be alive at different points in their development. So it wouldn't make sense for them to have the same level of consciousness, because that would mean that your level of consciousness when you were a baby is the level of consciousness that you would ever have throughout your entire life, and when you would die that way. And we don't see that because babies grow, they change, they evolve, they learn over time. So that's the first thing I notice, is that not everybody has the same amount of it. So one of the easiest explanations of that is life cycle. So it has to begin somewhere. Well, let's say it begins when you're born. Maybe it doesn't, but maybe that's where you first figure out that it's there. So even if it was around, you're just figuring this out. So you're born. Okay, so, well, you don't have a lot going on. You know that the light hurts, and that you're hungry all the time, and your butt hurts because nobody keeps your butt dry, because apparently when you urinate on yourself, there's at least a 30-minute waiting period before anybody does anything about this. And I'm the one with the diaper rash, and everything hurts, and nothing is great, except the people that kind of love me enough to give me food and try to comfort me when stuff goes bad. And, okay, so maybe these people aren't so bad. And then I figure out, well, it's not just these people. There's how many other people are there like this person? And then you see these screens, which you have no idea what those are. They're just random flashing images. Is this the Twilight Zone? You've never been outside the house except to go to the grocery store, and now you've got just images of all of these different worlds and fantasies. And hey, well, your mind isn't the same after that happens. That's the point. The point isn't that we all have these fantasy lives. Mine was a little different than that. That would have been a pretty cool one, especially if I had like a team of guys who knew how to show kids the right things in the right order so they don't emotionally cripple themselves. Because to be fair, the parents are trying their best, have inherited emotional crippling that they haven't been able to get rid of. So if anybody actually makes it to the point where they become like the Christopher Reeve, who can actually walk again version of emotional crippling, that means to me that whatever is going on is not permanent and it's not inevitable, which means it has variability. There's the ability to choose. So all of that seems tied up into the way just that our lives happen. So that's the first part about why I think consciousness behaves the way it does. But consciousness evolves. That's the other thing. Like it evolves so fast. Viruses don't evolve as fast as consciousness does. You can go from not having any knowledge of anything to having functional knowledge of a civilization in about a year. That's incredible. And then you can go into that civilization and find one of several million paths that have been followed, and find one that speaks to you for whatever reason, and decide to master that craft. Okay. Well, how many people have picked your path? And how many people have seen what you've seen? That's how you get evolution on a large scale. Think about that. You are literally creating a diversity of variation that inevitably will find the things that help it grow, because it's the process of elimination. It's natural selection. It is antibiotics interacting with bacteria but not eradicating it. It's the arms race to get oneself bigger, better, stronger, and faster in the mind, because the more that you do that, the more you realize what your body is capable of, what your mind is capable of, what your time is capable of. You could, with less effort and more perspective, triple your output and feel great at the same time. And isn't that a scary thought? Because what if some of the people out there who were self-destructive monsters got to feel great all the time? No, we can't have that. Well, the problem is, you think about it that way, you forget that the self-destructive monsters don't have the pieces it would take to make it work. So what's really happening is you are the failed evolution of a fear response. You're the one who didn't take the chance. You're the one who said, play it safe. But if you were the one that saw through that and said, so what? No, I don't believe you. And you were right. Well, now you're the new king of the mountain. Because everybody who's around you can't go where you are. And you know how to go there and come back. So you can come and go as you please, take what you want, and no one can stop you, except the people who are paying attention to you, because they will watch what you do. They will figure out for themselves how to do it because they are clever. And then very quickly you create a system where those who have it know they need it, or they're not going to matter anymore. And most of us have enough compassion that somehow most of those upgrades seem to eventually become distributed for free in some way, shape, or form on the internet by social. Now, the messages might be hijacked or co-opted or politicized or whatever, but the messages get out there. So that's kind of the way the evolution of consciousness would work, is everybody plays the same game. One person figures out a rule that everybody's following but they don't know. They figure out how to break that rule without getting caught. They come and go as they please and become wildly successful because no one can stop them. People who are paying attention learn how to replicate the process. There's a hierarchy that's created with the first finders at the very top of it, and probably hoping to keep it that way for quite some time, at least so they aren't beset with the torches and pitchforks. If you're thinking these people are kind that this happened to, because sometimes it happens by accident. And you look down and you say, I got to be really careful what I say to people, because I really don't understand what it means for words to come out of my mouth and be heard by a person who may have had an alien life to my own. What I mean as the most well-intentioned, perfectly crafted message could come out as this venomous poison. And that's real. And most of us, we react to that in different ways. And that's what tells me that it's also like it has properties of life, is is because there's diversity in reaction. And some of that diversity seems to match what you see in the animal kingdom. Some people, if they hear a toxic idea, they run. Oh, you can't have that in my life. No, I gotta block that person. I'm not gonna put up with that. The nerve of that guy. They run. Okay, like rabbits. So what? Rabbits are good at running. It works. Fine. It's one path. And then you've got the people who growl. Now, they get told what to do, and they're like, no, do it yourself. And then they move on along. Okay, fine. But then what happens? Somebody comes along and they actually mean it. And they growl, and maybe they get eaten, or maybe they know when to roll over and show their belly at the end and say, okay, fine, have it your way. But that's a different kind of reaction. We've all met that person. And then you have like the dinosaurs. They just come in. I am who I am. I want that. I deserve it. Anyone in this room can stand between me and it. And if you're fine with that and I keep going forward, that's what's going to happen. And so what does everyone do? They part for that person, like Moses in the Red Sea, because they realized that that person has given everything to a single moment. And they're not willing to do that for themselves. There's no way in hell they're going to do it for somebody they just met. But we don't think about that. Because, well, so anyways, the language of consciousness. I want to make sure I stay in time. It's 3 o'clock. Oh, I'm doing good. I felt like that was a lot of information, but it's a good use of time. So, consciousness, what happens when it doesn't work? Well, I think we've seen people who, I don't know how to say this kindly, they don't have a lot of diversity in their opinions. And maybe after a while they get really frustrated that nobody seems to care that they don't have any diversity in their opinions. So that makes them a little ornery. And maybe they tell everyone to go fuck themselves when they tell them to their face, hey, you're being too much right now and you just got to loosen up. And then they're the only person left in their world. Well, guess what? Consciousness just died for that person. They severed every connection to everything they ever had. They made the world so small that they couldn't even stand to be in it. And if you ever find yourself in that position, I don't know that I could find them. And finding lost people is what I do. And I don't know how to find them. So there may be others, but that's beyond
what I'm kind of here for.
What's that, brother?
I know I'm late. I know I'm late, but that sounds like what I'm here for.
Yeah, that's good. I just want you to know, Tony, that whatever reason you are here for, I am happy to be part of that.
Me too.
Because it could be
you can't say that with me, though, because we've already been deeper than that. And I throw that right back at you, and then we end up in the same state.
After that, you kind of love it.
But the same is true for you. Our deeper meaning, our deeper connection
was very deep.
Is shit. What is our deepest connection? Okay, past supporting each other, our connections are enjoyment and to have fun.
And enthusiasm.
I think our deepest connection is that we believe that the energy we exchange will continue to be enjoyable. Yes. I think that is the deepest truth we can give.
That's a good truth. I think.
But it's also personal, though. Like, it's only a truth for us. Like, Nancy's here, and I appreciate, and I haven't said it yet, but I appreciate every time you chime in even a little bit with just yeah, I know that. Like, I studied that for years because I kind of feel that way for a lot of things. But my first response is always to try my best to learn, because it seems like without that as a default, it's impossible.
Let me run a sentence by you.
Tell
me how you vibe with this one. So I want to take our connection, which is the biggest connection I've imagined being possible in terms of mental languages. We've done that. It's there. Okay, it's a little jury rig. I want to turn that into
mental
the iPhone.
and spiritual from my end.
Yeah. So I want to turn that into the iPhone, mass produce it, and put one in the hands of every mind I can find.
My only question would be how soon, because my life motto is patience and creativity, and time is a paradise, not a prison. Yeah. Nothing's impossible, but that's because this variable, which everybody else sees as their life, I shatter it. Every purpose I live for started before me and isn't going to end with me. Oh, yeah, every single purpose, every single thing I do every single day, if it didn't exist before me and it's not going to exist after me, I don't want to support it.
But you forget though, you crush a leaf, part of you exists. And the same goes, so we're all to say, if you raise a good child, that part of you exists too. So you can't get out of it that way.
The DNA existed before and after. Yeah, the principles and ideals. That's what I mean by bigger, you know?
Every day. That's a bad way to say it. How many people waste their DNA? More than one. Let's say it was one is too many. How about that? More than one. One is too many. That's my only point is that I think that you do more good than you see. And I see it, and I always want to point it out. So if I seem like I'm piling on, I'm saying that you just got some Vaseline on your eyes and trying to wipe off. Because maybe I admire you too much. Is that saying too much?
When I said our deepest connection was fun, that got us in like one axiom. And then for you our dance. You know what? That's it. I tried to put us on an axiom. And you can't, because people are full of infinite variables. Whatever you choose to say, Tom, right now, I'd bet you $100 that you cannot say any words to me connected that I will agree is our deepest connection.
Yeah.
We will have to go back and forth.
Well, let me try
1,000 times.
I get a try.
1,000 times.
I get one try, don't I, before you say that? I get
well, haven't you already had 2 or 3?
I'm giving you this one right now. But I need my train of thought here. Our deepest connection.
Nancy's excited. She's like, what are these young guys about to do?
Right, hang on. You took me really far from the thought. I got to get it back because it was very good.
You want me to walk you there?
Just say the last few things you said leading up to.
I got you. I saw your spark. I got you. Okay, so we've already been back and forth 2 or 3 times about how we've connected, what our deepest connections are, and our core or whatever. Like me and you both tried to. So before that, it was you couldn't say anything to me right now that I could fully agree was our deepest connection.
You're getting closer. I think it was the thing before that.
All right, before that, I said love. I said friendship. I said we're connected on fun because we agree that our energy exchange is will be enjoyable in the future.
I have it. Thank you. And very impressive, by the way. That's very impressive, by the way. You're able to recall your thoughts in that order. I can't do that. So I think our deepest connection was when you figured out that my axiom could change and frequently did so without notice. Not quite. Okay, look, that was a try. That was a good try. You gotta say that was.
I can't say that was a good try. I think that was a step backwards. I think you're still trying to map the borders of what I just said. I could if I wanted to, but then I'd have to walk it back further. I'd rather just start walking back. I can tell you why you're right and then tell you why you're wrong. But when you're making a statement about another person and trying to live within them, it's like it's a shared consciousness in which where agreement is not, things cannot exist.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, good one.
and so between us, what you said that was like, oh, say it again so I can tell you specifically what was bad. Go ahead, say it again. Can you say it again? Go ahead.
I'll try to capture the idea. I don't know if I can get the verbiage. The thing that took the longest for us to make a connection was figuring.
That's all I need. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I got it. So for you, you feeling and thinking like you're blind and working from that perspective, what's important to you is a level of trust and understanding in the same way Joseph is looking for fame. And so for you, when you feel connected to another person, that is your coinage.
That's when I connect to myself and don't know it.
Yeah, that's a deeper coinage for you, or a more expensive coinage for you.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like I've been focused on people for so long that I've got a lot more of my coinage stacked and organized than you. And even to the point where when you even told me at the very beginning you were blind and you can't feel emotions, or to some extent, you know, like whatever you told me.
Oh yeah.
From that point, I take everyone's words as truth, and try to see how many millions of ways they could be truth and still fit into my truth.
Yeah. You run it through the bullshit detector.
So yeah. So for you, so I'm gonna say for you, that's what makes you feel connected. To you, that's what's important. I think that's the same thing Joseph may be looking for too. He said, why don't people talk to me? And that's the same question you quoted, but I don't think that's the deepest question he can really ask. That's just the most general question that you guys can ask most people.
Right. You don't know how to ask differently.
Exactly.
You don't know how to ask differently sometimes.
But see, the difference is, and the opposite is, and the thing that he might really get from me right now is that we are so opposite that we have all come to the same conclusions, but I have the goal this month to personally connect with 100 people a day.
Yeah.
You practice every day this month. So from your blind perspective, that would be like trying to map 100 people a day. But for me, who's been mapping people my whole life, this is trying to go your end 100 people a day. And I think you guys could do 100 people a day. You already have like over 100 subscribers on YouTube.
I do a lot of chatting throughout the day, more than my boss should know.
Yeah, exactly. All you would have to do, all you guys would have to do.
Past it.
All you guys would have to do to achieve my end is to say, hey, 100 people send me a private message. And all you guys would have to do is respond to those private messages, and you would achieve my goal. But if I did that, that wouldn't happen. Right. If I did that, I would get 100 more followers or 100 more people, which I don't just want people. I'm looking for the depth of that. I'm looking for the other side of the number line on that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I told you, Tom, like we've already been back and forth 2 or 3 times. What happens online most of the time is people have different conversations at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
You can only connect with others as deep as you've connected with yourself. I've chosen.
Just said, I want to tie into what you just said. So one of the things that you'll see me do is if 2 people are having 2 different conversations, which happens, and I realize that, and it still follows your rule, that my goal can be to interact with the conversation in ways that move it closer and closer and closer to where it should be. And then eventually we meet. And that's kind of how I see that tying in. Is that a good way to tie that in? Does that break any of the things you see?
Yep, I'm with you on all that. I just responded to the message that Joseph sent in the chat. But am I all caught up? I kind of just jumped in. Did I skip over anything? I was 5 minutes, I think. I think I was only 5 minutes.
I don't know. I was trying
late.
to share a perspective with you that I thought united with yours. So I was just I'll sum it up and then ask if I had it right. So I was kind of like, do I have your permission to understand it this way and consider myself in the ballpark? So what you were saying is people have different conversations. They do.
Definitely same ballpark. Definitely same ballpark.
Okay, good. So if two people are having a different conversation, one of those people can recognize two people are having different conversations and then make their goal.
They can.
And then make their strategic goal to interact with the conversation in ways that slowly bump it back to a central point. And then not only do you have common ground, but you have common direction because of the previous interaction. And then now you are having the same conversation. That's kind of my view of how to bridge that. That's kind of my mental process that I follow to. I call those are the social algorithms, the strategic bumps.
I don't think most people want to have the same conversation.
What's that?
I don't think most people want to have the same conversation.
I know it's a lot of work.
So take all the scenarios you've given, like ever since we've known each other, because you've given a couple now where you know, and I've done the same with you. Like we have both broken down other conversations and gotten into each other's brains. Take all of that and then multiply it by 2 by trying to interject into a conversation where both people are having different conversations and having them not needing to understand they're having different conversations, but each of them feeling resolved and more knowledgeable because of it, and you as well. And that's what I'm trying to do in every single one of my Payoga chat groups. It's each a group of like-minded that I would like to pull towards the core of that like-mindedness, which is Payoga.
Intellectual barter beetle.
Which is Payoga. It's always about people. So as long as you respect another human being, then we can connect. I can find something to pull knowledge from you about that I don't have.
Yeah.
Anything that you, as long as you respect people, as long as you agree that people should be able to retain their lives as they wish, and they're not doing harm to others, then we can connect. And that's the core.
Let me tie that into the language of consciousness, because it definitely displays responses that simulate our own body's threat detection system. Okay, so I'm going to say consciousness behaves in ways that look like fighting, that look like running, that look like mating, and that look like feeding. And
was that mating?
Yeah. Look, children may see this.
You said it really quick. I just wanted to make sure. I'm okay.
Here's what we can do though. For the adult version, we can just beep it. We could just beep mating, and they'll fill in what they wanted to fill in. See, that's a clever reverse engineering there. Finished product oriented. Multi-layers with one take. Anyways, so yeah, the fighting. Consciousness evolves through conflict. Every choice is a conflict of consciousness. It's an exercise. Some of them are easy. Do I wake up and get coffee today? Well, sure, I get coffee every day. Well, it takes minimal effort to choose coffee. But say you only got enough left for half a cup. Now you have to choose, do I want coffee and do I only want half a cup? Is that going to be enough? Am I going to be unsatisfied? I have 2 choices now. Now that's a little bit harder. All the way up to what do I want my college degree to be, or what do I think is right or wrong? All of that kind of just builds on that. But that's pretty much the effort of consciousness. And consciousness that works more than learning to do more. You've seen people who are mentally tough. Where does that come from? Is that just magic? No, not entirely. It's not 100%. It's not 100% guaranteed what your starting hand will be, and there are a lot of different starting hands, and some of them are stronger than others, because that's how consciousness evolves. It covers all of its bases. So not everyone's going to have the same strengths and weaknesses, because that's the point of the game, is to have different strengths and weaknesses. Because the point of the game is to produce the strongest version of itself possible. So what does it do to make that happen? It fights. Getting beaten up teaches you something. Beating someone up teaches you something different. Getting beaten up while beating someone up because you're helping someone else teaches you something else. 3 different lives, 3 different lessons.
Question.
Yes.
Saying getting beaten up teaches you something. And then saying beating someone up teaches you something.
Something else. Yeah.
So I just did our whole dance in our head. And the core that I came up with was, you can't be taught anything by force.
No, I absorb all of your blows with my face and stomach repeatedly until you're my friend.
Say that a little slower.
Yeah.
Because if you can't be taught anything by force, then saying something teaches you something is not an absolute, and isn't even, I dare say, a default, because a lot of people try to teach lessons that way, and a lot of people don't believe in negative reinforcement. So
No, the social algorithm for that is different than the one I use for that. Is not a language of force.
yeah, so I question if it teaches you something, as
Yes.
opposed to you have the choice to learn something.
But I can change my axiom to either of those positions and understand both of them instantly, and I do. And I'm choosing to talk about this one, which is a thing I'll start pointing out more, because I know that's a disconnect we have. So yes, I do see
Gotcha.
the less interesting of the outcomes.
That kind of made me go like throughout our dance. And I guess whenever we go through our whole dance in my head, then I'll come up with something I think might be worth it.
If I had to describe my mental dance as best as I could, it's, if somebody throws something vicious at me, I'll absorb it with my face or stomach. I'll accept it. I'll give it empathy and a pat on the back, and maybe a story about how I overcame something similar. And then when we're friends, I don't know, slap them in the face or something. And that's kind of my payback for what they did to me. And they're fine with it, because after the first interaction, they realize what they did to me was nothing compared to what I did for them, because I let them see the consequences of their action, which meant they had to look at the sensitive side of themselves. And people who don't like doing that tend to not fuck with that person in the same way more than once, if they have a hard time becoming better people about the way they treat others. So my way of violence is to show somebody the consequences of it in the moment, and let them see my pain in a way that they have to understand. But that's my form of mental self-defense when things get real.
I follow all that. We're good.
Yeah, no, that's a tricky topic. And I actually, having you redo your conversation the way you did to help me remember that thing, it almost looks like when you're doing that, you're playing back the audio in your brain at a speed that makes sense to you. And you can do that because your memory is just good enough to do it. Is that kind of what's happening?
Yes, in part. I was responding to the message and listening to you talk as well. But
yes, kind of like you have an answering machine for your consciousness. That is freaking sweet, dude. You took a message and then listened to it and then responded. That's incredible.
I love that.
But for me, that's baseline. And that's why I've like told a few people now we're gonna build a bomb. Because for me, that's baseline. And I can draw you. Okay. Remember last week when we had our like private video chat, just because I was like, we need to connect?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we came to our analogy of the bomb, I'll tell you the truth right now. I have no idea how we got there. Like, I can't map it back for anybody in any way. But I know that when we got there, I understood it. And that's the part that mattered to me. And the way that we're building our bomb and the way that I've put it for my people on my end of my spectrum is that the same way hydrogen and whatever built the atom bomb did it.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can explain it to them.
So Anthony,
And that
here's something.
where you're aiming for is the opposite of where I'm aiming for in some ways, and the same place at where I'm aiming for in some ways.
Yes.
And we will both achieve the same ends at opposite ends of the spectrum. And the only way to go is going to be up. I've had the philosophy now about synergy for a long time that 1 + 1 is 3. And I remember in microeconomics class in college is probably where the core developed. Because if one country produces everything better than another country, working together, they can both develop more. That took the synergy concept and it made it no longer hypothetical. I saw the science, physics, logic breakdown. If this country produces potatoes and apples at a better rate than this other country at both, with more manpower and everything, even if this other country is way less equipped, by specializing, both countries together can produce more.
When a motor spins, it has a positive and negative field that extends well beyond the reach of either pole. Yeah, 1 + 1 is 3.
Exactly, and that's what I've built my life on. Like that's why I had the epiphany. Like I just fucking love group projects. Like that's my life. My life. I would love to make my life into a group project. Like, and I'm not talking.
I need to share something with you.
Go for it.
No, and it's good talk. It's an extension of knowledge, and it's also a request for trust. Same thing. So this is deep knowledge. You said that when we first started talking, you really didn't know what was going on or how we were going to connect. More or less. And you were happy when we did. It was a story, started bumpy, ended good. And you don't really know how.
It won't throw you off, I promise.
Okay.
Your small connection that you gave before of when I understood you or something like that, for me, that connection came when you actually scared me by throwing everybody at me in your group. But then when I asked you to be admin, you explained why. Yeah. My wearing my heart on my sleeve and my open door policy meant that once I understood you and you explained why, even if you asked me to be admin of my group, I would have been like, sure.
Yeah.
So for me, my openness occurs there. That's where I operate because of my control of those around me already and everything else. So like I said, it's promised it wasn't going to throw you off, but that's like the connection.
It actually kind of adds to my point because it's the more stepping stones there are along the way that you can point to, the more it'll reinforce what I'm trying to tell you that I hope you trust is. I didn't know what we were looking for, but I knew if I interacted with you in the specific ways that I did, we would find it together and I would get to see what it was. You can trust me that I could receive you in that way and know where you were trying to go enough to get you there.
Of course, that's it.
That was my
100%
time, and I was thankful it worked because I always think that the payoff is always worth it. So, well, good. And the reason that was allowed, by the way, some people notice this is a different conversation than most of our lectures. And there's going to be more interaction in the future. But specifically, this one is about the language of consciousness. So we're going to get back on topic. Language of consciousness. And what I have just shown with Tony and myself is an example of, and he showed it better than I could have from his perspective, and that's kind of the point, is when it comes to how we understand things, there's a map. It's not random. It's a spectrum, okay? There's different choices that are going to be made for different reasons. And one of those reasons, which I'll get to in the lecture about the gut brain and the subconscious, is the reason the shape of the map is what it is. It's not only can I say there's a map, I can tell you what it looks like, because our map is guided by our amygdaloid responses, our response to our senses. We have a limited number of things to tell us what's good or bad. We get fight, flight, mating, and feeding. So some of these perspectives are going to be hyper-specialized in fighting, hyper-specialized in running, hyper-specialized in feeding, hyper-specialized in mating. Okay? Tony and I, believe it or not, are both hyper-specialized in mating when it comes to mental languages of consciousness. He has learned how to connect to just about any human being on the planet through emotional vibe alone. And he's learned how to do that with anybody. So he's got the biggest harem, or half of it anyways, until I take his other half because he's teaching it to me. So anyways, so and on the other hand, though, I have taken the opposite approach. If you think about it this way, and then that way, and then that way, well, you'll see that we actually agree. And I don't cheat, just good at it. That's my connection. I'm good at merging. No, it's no problem. I can take care of that. You see, this is really, if you look at it from this way, it's quite beautiful. That sort of thing. The showman, as it were, the dresser up of difficult truths, the jester, right? You guys have seen me. I got the clown stickers, and I always, talk about throwing pies, and the fool, right? He's the guy who can say it the way that doesn't vibe, right? I'm the negative vibes. Tony's the positive vibes. Why do you think his smile is so big and he doesn't have to work for it? You know how hard it was for me to learn how to smile? Exhausting. But I did it because it's fun.
I empathize with that pain. Remember, I'm all about people. My smile came for explanation for others in the group in 2006 when I started college. I became a cheerleader.
Okay.
And becoming a cheerleader meant that you had to smile for at least the entire length of a game, plus overtime.
That did it for you. I just practiced really hard. I started by shouting. Shouting was a lot easier than smiling. And then I got really good at shouting. And I practiced shouting without losing my train of thought, which was a different kind of scary. The incredibly intense, but perfectly rationally speaking, hard-edged, questioning inquisitor who has no doubt in his voice. That was one, that was easy. Why? Because that's what I felt my greatest aspiration was. And made me angry that I didn't have it. And when I was angry, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry, I guess. And that guy would come out. And he's probably the strongest part of me, the most developed. And he never worked for me. So it wasn't until I learned how to work with my anger that my anger started to work with me instead of against me. And that was a big moment for me. To learn how to bring the anger without bringing the hurt. That took a lot of soul searching, because I realized a lot of times the hurt was coming from me seeing parts of myself that were true. Well, what do you do about that? You can try to turn the light off, but it's there. And the longer you tell yourself it's not there, the more you're not going to go anywhere near it, because you really don't want to get proven wrong after a long time. It's almost not so bad if it happens right away, but if it's been going on for 30 years, well, the knowledge of lost potential to kill a person hits them, right? So, anyways, I forgot where I was going with all that. Oh, so yes, the way that the emotional thing awakened. And this is all language of consciousness. This was things I didn't understand how to process. Comparisons I didn't understand how to make. Key players I didn't know how to identify. A lot of these are players that many people have experience with in different ways. But the players don't change. The players are fighting running, fleeing, and mating. It's all variation of that. And you can break those down into positive and negative elements. So it's really 8 dimensions. So we'll cover the dimensional thought in a different lecture, but just accept that more dimensions is better. Okay, it's more. I'll explain why more is better later. But more is better, bigger is better, everything's better in places. So you have fighting. Well, there's 2 kinds of fighting, or at least 2 kinds of fighting that I can think of. Fighting that you chose, and fighting that found you. Those are 2 very different kinds of fighting. And now you have 2 extremes, 2 very different kinds of fighting, which means that somewhere between here and here, you have all the other different kinds of fighting. Okay, so you have the whole spectrum here, from here all the way to here, everything in between. Then if you take that spectrum, imagine it's a sheet of paper, and you put a twist into it, and you connect the ends, and you make it a Mobius strip. Now you have the entire idea as one self-contained thing. That is how the consciousness understands ideas. And the problem is, if you know what a Mobius strip is, it has one side, but you have to travel around it twice to find it. So if you only like to be near your side, you're only going to go so far this way and see that it's changing. You're only going to go so far that way and see that it's changing away from what you like. You are never going to find out that if you kept going in one direction, eventually you would get back to where you started. And that's how you know the ideas are connected. And here's some big ones for you. Logic and emotion are one thing. Logic and emotion are one thing. If you think they're opposites, it's because you're standing on one end and can't see the other side of the floor. You need to be able to step away from your spot enough to see that there are 2 sides underneath. And that is why those points are opposite, is because you are exactly as far apart as those 2 points can be. And that can move. That's only true for you. This other person has the same idea, but their points are over here. So they see this much, and they only talk about that much. And these people over here, they see this part, and these people see this part, and they all talk about it, and none of them agree. And like 1 person out of 100 pays attention to everybody who's talking, because that's a mutation, apparently. It's an advantage, because if you can only hear the people you understand, you're not going to understand very many people. And the people who learn how to understand more people, all of a sudden can figure out, well, that's the same as that's the same as that's the same as that. And now it doesn't matter what your position is, because I can understand it, because I took the time to see how this was a bigger concept than I had given it credit for, and realized that the things I thought were opposites were really the same thing that was wrapped up into one idea shape. And then you can learn what's inside that idea and what's outside that idea, because it's a closed shape at that point. So that's the way consciousness eats, by the way. That is the way consciousness eats. You put out this little strip and you say, this means this and that means that. And I understand everything from here to here. And I take it and I twist it around and connect it, and I can see it. It's right there, and I consume it. That's how consciousness eats. That's how consciousness grows. That's why some people have bigger appetites than others. It's like an eating competition. It's also survival of the fittest, the gobbling up of resources. Why do you think there is the top 1% of any social hierarchy? It's because there's a top 1% of consciousness within that system that understand how to find the rules underneath the rules faster than anyone else. They understand it so well, they can make the rules ahead of time and be invisible at the same time. That's the difference in consciousness between the top 1% and everybody else who doesn't have certain mutations. And some of these mutations are pretty damn strong. I can tell you that it wasn't a mutation, but it was a very weird set of circumstances that gave me my ability to see things from multiple perspectives. It's just, I never knew this, but apparently to me, it is not a common thing to constantly jump around to every which way and analyze everything with a 1 second delay between every change. I just thought that's how everybody understood it. How come nobody understands how I'm talking about it? So anyways, that's not a mutation, but it is an improbability. My parents were the perfect cocktail to create whatever I became, I guess. The mother's side, vicious woman. There's no kind way to put this woman. She was abusive. She yelled constantly, constant belittling, constant channeling. Unstable mood and could change rapidly without provocation. Physical, wasn't good. Wasn't good. So I am a new consciousness that is learning fundamental rules of how things are. I have no frame of reference. One of the first things I learn is that people who change quickly are scary. So I can't watch them change because I'm scared. So I don't. So guess what? When you're a kid and you don't watch things change, you don't learn how things happen. You just get random nonsense, like photographs with no narrative. Everything is there, but there's no story. Everything can be anything. You don't know what it's supposed to be. And on top of that, so that's okay, great. That's the definition of imagination. So that's where my imagination came from, believe it or not. My imagination had to fill in the gaps. So my inability to tell what was relevant made me have to make up more of it. That's an evolution. It's a response to stimuli I was given. Great. What about intelligence? There's a genetic component to that. I don't know if or what component of that played a part in me, but I can say, if you have no guidance, no parental guidance, and you can't tell what's relevant, you have to get it right. There's consequences. Sometimes from the mother, sometimes from the action, sometimes both. Sometimes good consequences would receive a bad response. Sometimes bad responses would be encouraged and rewarded. What am I supposed to do with all of that? I have to get it right. So the brain says, well, you better understand it. We're going to do the best we can, and I guess I got lucky. That's just the two things. But then you have my dad. Okay, so that's a lot of emotional weight, the constant shaking of reality. I don't have a stable reality at this point at all. Nothing makes sense, and nothing is the same from one moment to the next. No coherence because of the anxiety. I have a father who was present, visitation, and he was a very compassionate and understanding man. He was not expressive. So what he was able to do was give me stability without emotional validation. He taught me by his actions a series of if-then statements that I realized if I do this, my life will turn out like his, and his is not that bad. And he was always nice to me, so I never questioned it. So that
My father was a Stoic as well.
So that gave me a logical framework. He gave me an answer that I couldn't understand because he knew what was relevant. And he didn't know how to tell me what was relevant. And he didn't know that what was relevant was that I had no access to my emotions. Because think about it, I cannot face transition at this age. It's too scary. So what happens when you feel something? Change. Fear of change. You can't even look at it. It's very difficult to experience. You stop it. You keep it clamped up tight. The only thing strong enough to do that is rage and fear. So you give yourself a cocktail of nervousness and depression. So you're trying so hard not to feel anything that you feel terrible. Well, congratulations, you played yourself. You are the core, you are the source of and the solution to your bad feelings. You are leaning into them and giving them strength, or validating them rather than challenging them. That's the lesson I had to learn. Not everybody learns that lesson. Not everybody thinks that's a good lesson. Worked for me. And then start to figure out that, well, I can feel these things now, but I have something different. Because remember, I said the paths, they go different ways. And I'm way over here because most of the people who don't know what's real go crazy or in jail, or they die. They get gang related, they make stupid decisions. And their insides are destroyed beyond repair. So that is why I can say way over there, because this is where people spin out. I can tell you that because it's where I'm from. It's a dangerous place to be because you're at the edge of what is understood and you don't even know what that means. So anyways, figure out that there is so much difference between these emotions that as far as it took me to find them by deconstructing the scaffolding in the world around me and pattern recognition and clever thinking, and the thing I was born to do literally because I didn't have a choice, which was make sense where it doesn't make sense. You start to run into things that make sense to other people. They don't make sense to you, but you've been at this long enough that you say, this looks like something that should make sense. This looks like something that if it makes sense to that person, it has value. And I want the value that they have. That's the mating desire, by the way. I want that for myself. That will be good for me. And so you seek it out. And hopefully a good time is had by all. But that's kind of what happens. You find somebody at the edge of where you are, you meet, and you make each other more. That's kind of good. So because I came so far from the one direction, where it's usually with the schizophrenics, and by the way, are very brilliant people, you can learn how to talk to them. If they're not so far gone, they forget how to talk to themselves. You find somebody at the edge of that thing, they are brilliant. They have a literal hive mind that listens to them. Think about that. 10 of you, Tony, all on different projects at the same time that didn't need a break, separate encouragement, separate demeanor, all programmable to your exact specification. As many as you want running at the same time. What could you do with that? That's what they can do when they see, if they know where to look, which they usually don't. But if you can find someone who can point them where to look, which is my specialty, the things they find are incredible. That's the consciousness, the language of consciousness. You understand from your own perspective. And I'm using my journey to kind of give that perspective. So all of these emotions that I run into, I say, well, this is the first time I've understood this anger thing. What does it mean? What does it mean to have a lot of it? What does it mean to have a little of it? Where does it come from? Can I break it down into smaller parts? I think about being angry. Well, yes, I can actually. Being angry is usually in response to losing control. Okay, so what's losing control? Losing control is losing your coherence on reality. Things don't make sense the way they do. So then what? Well, now you have to choose. The things aren't making sense. What am I going to do? Do I run? Do I fight? Do I get around it? Do I be clever? Do I be strong? I don't know. That's what happens in that moment. And you do that with anger. You figure out what it's made of. You figure out a different question. Well, I'm angry. Why? Because I don't have control over that. Why? Because I want control over that. Why? Because my life sucks. Why? Because I can't do anything about it. Why? Because I'm useless. Why? That's one path. They're not mad about that thing. They're mad because they're useless from their perspective. What does that mean? They want to feel useful. What does that mean to you? And so you ask them that question. Well, what would it take for you to be useful? And you get two different responses. The first one is, who the hell do you think you are asking me that question? And I won't ask myself. And the other one is, well, you know, I never thought about it that way. Maybe I could think about that. And then you see the little light goes on and their life gets a little better. And maybe their life wasn't that bad to begin with, but it doesn't matter if it wasn't that bad. If it can be a little better, better is better. You don't have to pick which kind of better you're okay with. Just take the better. But how dare you ask me that question? Well, I feel better. I'm sorry you don't. If you got the stomach for it, I'll keep trying. I can ask you this question 50 different ways, and one of them is going to trip you up because you're not going to be able to lie to yourself about it because you won't be that clever. The only reason I figured it out is because I learned how to lie to myself every different way that is possible, including a bunch of ways that make up games that I'm playing that I don't know I'm playing, and then find out that that game is nested inside an even larger game. And you figure out these increasing layers of complicated lies that you come to believe with no idea how or why. Who figures out they're scared of transition? I do. Because I watched it. It was the pattern. It took 38 years to figure out that was the common denominator. But it was there. And if you knew how to look for it, you could see it. And then guess what? Once I could see it, I saw the box I was in and knew which questions to ask to break out of it, how to find the edges. And everybody is trapped inside a box. I don't care who you are. Some of your boxes are bigger, some of your boxes are smaller. Your box can get bigger or smaller, and it's all dependent on the choices you make about what you think is true. That's a language of consciousness. It doesn't matter what's real. In fact, you probably don't know what's real. I guarantee you don't have it all right. The only thing I'm willing to say about humanity that I think is true when it comes to consciousness is if you add up every human experience there ever was, you would be able to find a single representation that summed up everything we know. Which means if my box can get bigger, and I can learn how to make my box get bigger fast enough because I'm the one looking for that, my goal is to see how much of the box I can get to cover how much of what is there. Which means I need to find the most far out geniuses that exist and talk to them, figure out why they're so smart, and what they see that nobody else does that isn't complete delusion and nonsense. Because if their life is stable, they've got something right. And if you can figure out what that is, then you can practice it. You figure out how to make your box bigger. What does this person know that I don't? Why is that person not worried and this person is? Well, this person knows it's going to be okay. Why? Because nothing bad's going to happen to him for the next 10 minutes. He's fine with that. That other person only knows he's going to be fine for the next 10 minutes and then doesn't know what's going to happen after that. Now, the difference is that one guy believes he can feel calm until he's in danger. That other guy says, if I'm calm before I'm in danger, then if I'm calm before I'm in danger, then I'm a sucker. So those are the lies that you can figure out. That's how consciousness evolves, grows, it changes. Whoever has the biggest box wins. That's kind of how consciousness works. That's why it's a life form. It's a dominance hierarchy, like everything else. Jordan Peterson says that all the time. Let's see. I'm trying to think now. Language of consciousness. Let's talk about it. So that's my metaphysical animal kingdom analogy of consciousness. That's not the only way I understand consciousness. That is one very useful way that I understand consciousness. I'm going to give you another way that I understand consciousness that is different. Okay, so it has nothing to do with the previous one. There are different rules at the center of it, and it reaches the same outcome, which is important to me because if I can reach the same outcome using completely different rules, it means that the rules I have chosen, which are all different from each other, are probably true. That's how I make sure my ideas are good. So here's that with consciousness, that I can't just have one theory of consciousness. I have multiple theories that grab different perspectives and add them all together in something that's consistent. That's the scientific method. You refine, and add. You test and add. So the different way to view consciousness is an emergent property based on the interactions between energy and matter. Okay, this is the physics analogy here. And for people who are keeping track, we also had a martial arts analogy in the last episode. So consciousness is a martial art. There's a perspective for that, and there's moves, etc. Consciousness is woodworking. I'm sure you can come up with a dozen examples. But, the next one we're going to talk about is where we're going. Consciousness. What was my example? Oh, physics. There we go. I had to play my own recorder, and it gets really bad reception. Barely do it. Physics. So I noticed that I have a degree in physics. That was my college education. And it was a lot of math classes, and it was a lot of conceptual thinking. Okay, so let me tell you what physics is in the language that someone who doesn't understand math is, that math could understand. Physics is the story of why nature is. Physics is a narrative. And the characters inside that narrative is math. The heroes are the equations that work. They slay the dragons of the unknown. Okay, it's the story. It's the story all over again. The call to adventure. Why does that happen? The refusal of the call. And I don't care why that happens. But then something bad happens. And then someone else asks, why did that happen? And then the guy goes, well, fine. I guess I'll go check it out because I don't want that bad thing to happen anymore. And so the hero goes out, and then, oh, they're into the unknown now, and they have some adventures, but they're kind of close to where they are, so they beat everything up because they're the big kids in town. And they have success. And then they find out that their quest, is going to be over here, and they have to go get this doodad to open the thing, or to pass the thing, or to power the thing, or you need a thing to do the thing. Okay, that's the essence of fiction. You need a thing to do the thing. You need a thing to feel a thing. You need a thing to stop the thing. Things doing things, that's fiction. All right, so physics, same structure. We need a hero to explain why our galaxy is shaped the way we think it is, because we can only see the ones around us. We don't know, we can't see our galaxy. Okay, everything that we've seen about our galaxy is our best guess. It's math. It's a lot of complicated math. So it's like big heroes on a giant crusade to map this unknown thing. And guess what? We found this equation, and this seems to work. And if we think that energy and mass are the same thing, this happens. And well, what about the center of these things? What holds it all together? Well, we don't know, but it's this really dense, really powerful black hole, all-consuming monster. And if you get too close to it, there's no coming back. Well, there's your big bad right there, the destructor of the universe. And then what about the stars? Well, they power everything. Those are your local lords and your kingdoms. And some of these places are barren, and some of them you've got two people that are like feuding all together, your binary star system. And then you've got your lone planets orbiting dead stars, and those are your dying, farmers with their kid who's trying to keep the farm going on his own, but he's going to die because he's got power up. So all of these different stories are taking place metaphorically just by observing the distribution of the cosmos. That's physics. That's what physics is. Okay? It's an intellectual pursuit. There's reasons that it's very practical to have it, but the driving force behind it is narrative. We need the story. So the math tells the story. So now you have a different perspective telling you that stories are ways that we understand information if you look at physics that way. Let's say, so let's make another story. That person over there is having a bad day. Let's also imagine that person is a billiard ball and he's rolling down. And you know that if you roll into that person as another billiard ball, you hit him to the left, he's going to go to the left. And if you hit him to the right, he's going to go to the right. And if you hit him dead on, you're both going to stop and bounce off each other. But you also know that if you hit him just right, maybe he'll go into the pocket where he was aiming. And so he's already rolling. You see where he's going. And you hit him just right and he goes in the pocket. Maybe you come up to him and say, hey, when you're having a bad day, I've been there and I'm not going to try and make you feel better because I know that doesn't work. But I just want you to know that I care that you're having a bad day and that's really all I can do for you. I just want you to know I did it. And maybe that's what they needed to hear. Or maybe they're an asshole and they don't care. Who knows? Point is, that's Newtonian physics. Angle, trajectory, velocity. Line the shot up and you take it. Bing, bang, boom. There is cognitive dissonance is Newtonian physics. So if you understand where the dissonance is coming from, you can aim it because people don't know they can change the direction of it. That's why it's dissonance. It's involuntary. Ping, that doesn't make sense. Whoa, negative emotion spike. That makes me anxious. I don't understand that at all. I'm going to stop paying attention. That sort of thing. That's cognitive dissonance. And it takes many forms. It's fear.
I definitely like that. And I can add to cognitive dissonance in that I deal with cognitive dissonance, motivated reasoning, and confirmation bias. So you've got cognitive dissonance, which you've already explained. Motivated reasoning means if I think it's this way, then when I find information, even if the information is balanced, that I'll still see it the way that I thought it would. So neutral information is seen as pointing to my side, motivated reasoning. And then confirmation bias says that I can find whatever I believe. So if I don't like Obama and I Google Obama sucks, why? Then I will find more about that. That's confirmation bias. So whenever I deal with cognitive dissonance, I don't just see cognitive dissonance anymore. I usually go ahead and already attribute all the three, attributes of evil, I call them, because evil is against logic in my mind.
You lump them together and see it as the same thing?
No, not the same thing. Yeah. But when I see evidence as one, I know that it's likely I'll see the other two. Kind of like when you see an anger problem, he probably has a warrant or two or an arrest record or, Yeah, exactly.
So question, do you know how to use the dissonance to find the other two?
Maybe not the same way you do. Because I don't see the need to find the other two. For me, the way I work, the other two become apparent through casual conversation.
Oh, because dissonance is bad axioms. And what I do is fix axioms by testing them.
I don't think it's a bad axiom.
No, the dissonance itself is you processing a bad axiom. Something's contradictory. You have to decide what's right.
Contradictory isn't bad, though. You said bad, and I think that sparked a red flag for me,
Right.
But yeah, I agree. Cognitive dissonance means there's something I cannot agree with.
Right. Yeah, It's just I'm categorical. Yeah.
Not bad, but just it doesn't work.
So no, it's true. What I'm saying is that it's true that you have the dissonance, you have the confirmation bias, and you have the tendency to ignore neutral information and make it what was it? The reasoning, the leading reason, motivated reasoning. You have the motivated reasoning. My point is that if you have those three pieces of information, you can solve for the bad axiom, like simultaneous math equations, and then provide a new axiom which balances all three of these positions in a way that is understood and also releases the dissonance, frees the confirmation bias, and opens up receptiveness to non-motivated reasoning. So that's why I do it, is because if you know all three, you can untangle it. So that was really good that you brought that up, because I don't think I would have never said that.
Yep, just like I said. Well, see, the thing is, you wouldn't have said it, but it's there, and it's part of your process unknowingly, and maybe those are extra. See, if you would have just kept going, then those would have been extra steps that you would have kind of not needed to cover. But the fact that you said cognitive dissonance, and I brought up these two other points, made you bring it back to a sub point of where'd you end with it? You ended with
once you know,
there's more steps there. Or you ended with you can bring them back.
Yes.
See, you ended with looping them all back together as well. So remember, this was all just kind of a sub thread of I gave you a little bit of extra of me that
it's a useful application of odd reasoning, and it becomes
useful application of odd reasoning.
Yes, that's a good one. That's a useful application of odd reasoning.
I'll type it.
Which behaves as a axiom diagnostic tool and treatment recommendation machine. So I can find out why your crack is whack and get you back on track. And I know you vibe with that, because look at that.
I like that.
But that's the, again, the language of consciousness. I keep saying that because, and I can go anywhere with this conversation, because that's literally what consciousness is. Every thought that every one of us has expressed are pings on the map of greater consciousness. So fight or flight, I covered those back. I'm going to get back to that. Good fighting and bad fighting. Fighting that you believe in and you know is good for survival, whatever. You decide what good is, so you believe in it. Fighting that you believe in. Fighting that you don't believe in. I don't want to fight. Why are you picking on me? I don't want to defend myself. Fine. Now I hate you. Because you made me do that. You made me see that part of myself that I don't like. Because I don't like to feel that way and accept that it's there. You brought it out of me. So I'm going to treat you like scum. Because that's how I treat that part of myself. Don't realize it. So that's the fight or flight. That's the fighting. So the flight. Reasons to flee. Well, maybe it's a good idea. Maybe you've got an unhealthy obsession with maritime barnacle boat anchor configurations. And you realize that this is a do-nothing life. And there's only so much you can get from barnacle boat anchor configurations. And there's something wrong with you. And if you could only figure out what it was, you could be interested in more things than barnacle boat anchor configuration. So, like, there's that part of it, the flight, right? I should be scared of this. Something is obviously wrong. Maybe I need to get away. Maybe that is the answer. That's the good side of flight. It'll preserve you. The bad part of flight. Well, guess what? Now, you're randomly to be scared. Okay, well, maybe there's a good reason to be scared. But let's say that we already covered that in the good side. Now it's the bad reason to be scared. The bad reason to be scared is if I don't run from this, if I don't leave, I'm going to be the bad person. And I don't like to be the bad person. I don't like to be seen as the bad person. I don't like to think of myself as the bad person. So what do I have to do? This person's challenged me. I can't be next to them. I can't admit that I'm a bad person. So I'm gonna berate them. I'm gonna make them less, make myself a hero by comparison. And the only way that I can do that is become so vicious towards them that the darkest parts of my soul are put on full display and attributed to them against their will. And then, in the moment of their greatest triumph, they ride out on fanfare and horses as they block that person and remove them from their life, never to be seen or heard from again. They made themselves the hero of a story where they went to somebody and dumped their psychic garbage on them. And enough other psychic garbage dumpers told them that's okay. And then they tell the good people that it's bad of you to make people feel bad for treating you like garbage. You should accept that. You should want to feel like garbage. Well, that's not how that works. You're going to fight that. No, I can choose to feel like garbage because you are doing something redeeming that is making me give a damn about your pathetic life at this moment. Something that I see in you that is worth accepting that garbage, because I think you and I would both be happier if it was off. And if I thought there was a chance that that would work, I'd be willing to put in the effort.
Yes.
But nobody tells another person that is your job. Because
Talking about nothing. I just my same routine every day. Yeah.
Grant, to say something, I can. If you're asking a question, I can't hear you, and I want to. If you're not asking a question, maybe your mic's open and you don't know.
It sounded like he was talking to somebody else.
Oh, okay, one of them deals. I just don't want to miss anything. If you need me to, Joseph, stop me. But anyways, yeah. So this person makes himself the hero when they were the one that went out and did a bad thing, and they can't even face the fact that they did a bad thing. They can't look at the consequences of their actions. So, well, your bullshit detector works even if you're the one bullshitting yourself. So why would you need a reason to tell you yourself is a good person if your bullshit detector didn't say, hey, you might be being a bad person right now? Oh, no, because of this and this and this. And then your bullshit detector go like, okay, as long as I never see anything that disagrees with what you have told me, I can believe that. And so what happens the first time someone comes around and says something that your bullshit detector says is not true because you told it wasn't true? Oh, that person's the enemy. No, they're trying to lie. They're deceiving you. I would never lie to you. I'm you. That person is a villain. And that's how that happens inside the mind. And it becomes literal bigger sword, bigger dragon. Because what you don't realize is your bullshit detector does not come back the same size every time. And there's a very specific reason for that. Every time your bullshit detector finds you again, it is larger. And the reason it is larger is because every time you make it go away, you have to make yourself smaller. You give something away because that's what makes it okay. And now you find the people at the end of this rope, they can't talk to anybody. They can't hear words in the English language, regardless of their context. They can't function in conversation without incredible panic or anger. They can't let anyone speak for fear that the wrong words put next to their own would do anything. And they think it is more dignified and valorous to shout next to somebody so you cannot hear them than it is to say something that's worthwhile. That is the end of that path, and it's not pretty. And everybody who looks at that knows exactly what it is. And that's why those videos do very well. Because your consciousness needs to understand things that can destroy you. There is a survival mechanism inside your consciousness. That's what cognitive dissonance is, a survival mechanism. So we talked about the fighting, we talked about the running. What about feeding? Well, you've got two different kinds of feeding. Actually, I could go deeper with this, but I don't have time, so I'm just going to keep it simple. You have food that's good for you, and you have food that's bad for you. And maybe you have food that is force-fed to you. And maybe there's 10 kinds of food, and you don't realize there's only 2 ingredients. That's how consciousness eats. And what it eats is what it becomes. And so the positive desire to do that would be, I want to eat things that are going to make me stronger. That's curiosity. The language of feeding for consciousness is curiosity, the positive one in this. Curiosity. I'm interested in this thing. Why? because there is something tied to this thing that will make it harder to destroy you. What? Well, if you don't ask why you're interested in it, you'll never find out. Oh, I just like boats. Okay, you just like boats. Great. Your subconscious produced a miracle which made you curious about boats somehow. And your response is, oh, I guess I just like boats. That is like the most dick move a person can pull on their subconscious. It's like, hey, that dog kind of barked funny. All right, back to whatever I'm doing. Like, the feat of engineering it takes to make a person curious in something is astronomical. Why does it happen? If you can answer why you are curious in a thing, you will understand what you needed to learn by being curious in that thing. There's a lesson there. And I can give you an example. I've always liked martial arts movies. Why? I understood fighting. Okay, because it was my native language growing up. Okay, so what did I learn through fighting? Hey, people interact this way when they think. Well, if they interact this way, I remember all these cool moves. What's the mental equivalent of that? How do I block a bad idea? How do I get out of the way? How do I make it look like I have cool anime powers? How do I split myself in two places at once? You can do that in your imagination. You can do that in consciousness. You just give a person an idea here, give them an idea here. And if they don't know what to do, they'll feel like they're getting cognitive dissonance from both sides. But that's the point. My subconscious was telling me, I can understand something meaningful here, if you can figure out what it is. Everything that you are interested in, that is your desire to feed your consciousness. That's the positive side of it. There's two to every one of them. The negative side of it, things you are disgusted in. Things you would not touch with a 10-foot pole. Things you don't think about, things you don't look at, things you don't like to remember exist. Disgust. Aversion. If you can't look at it, it is a monster that can kill you and you won't see it coming. That is what your consciousness is saying to you. You should be disgusted in this because you can't look at it. You need to know that because you can't look at it, you are weak against anything that is over there. And that's the easiest place to hide if you're trying to defend yourself mentally. What's a person disgusted at? Okay, you don't like people who do blank. Well, what's a nice thing you can think about people who do blank? See how fast they go away. Just ask them to talk about the thing they don't like in positive words. That's disgust. There's something missing from their diet. And the fact that they can't see it. Now, if you were an animal, that would be a good thing to listen to. A good thing to listen to, like, if I eat this, I could get sick. But that's not how consciousness works. Consciousness has the power of simulation. Consciousness can make a copy of itself and throw it away if the experiment doesn't work. Consciousness can have multiple tries. You can imagine what it means to understand an idea that disgusts you. And you can understand the entire concept of a thing that disgusts you. And you will find that if you can go through that process, you still won't like it. And you'll have good reason not to like it. But you'll have control over that. You'll be able to look at it to make sure that nothing is hiding behind it. That is the danger of disgust. And that is used all the time. If I make you disgusted, you will not look at it. And I'm going to put something there that I need to happen because you're disgusted. You'll let me. Which, by the way, if you're a career climber and you want to keep a useful social algorithm, and you want to get just a little bit more than maybe your due, and it's kind of like the inner office politics thing, where it's not a set structure. There's maneuvering, there's a pecking order, and you want to be at the top of that pecking order. You learn how to make people give you what you want in exchange for them not having to be wrong. And they will give you what you want every time and tell you what a good idea it was for you to say so. Because with that, comes the attachment that because they're doing this, not only are they not bad a person, because they have a binary mindset, they must be a good person. You think so too. And maybe you do. Maybe they earned that and it's genuine, but you're aware of it. And you know that some strategic honesty in that moment will get you ahead. And being aware that that oddly specific perspective becomes very useful in that moment to create opportunity. That is the benefit of the ultimate benefit of consciousness. And that's the ultimate goal of consciousness, since we're coming up toward the end. Consciousness is to seek optimal outcome for itself. And that's a tricky thing. That's a self-contained statement that can mean whatever it wants to mean. So some people think optimal outcome is one thing. Some people think optimal outcome is another. But because human beings interact with each other so much, we have to align to some degree that we're in this quasi semi-stable state where eventually certain universally accepted truths just become a part of what holds us together. We just all understand it's true because all of us act like it's true and nobody questions it. And that's, nobody questions it. Nobody questions it. That's the key to that. It's not that it's simple. It's that nobody questions why we do it that way. Why are we sitting in chairs shaped like that? Why do chairs have 4 legs? Why couldn't they have 3? Why wouldn't that be the style that's designed? Why are houses made of drywall on the inside instead of some other perfectly acceptable material? In some places they are, in some places they aren't. Why do we wear clothing when it's the right temperature? We all just decided that was a good idea. What about jewelry? What about makeup? What about this? What about that? What about, nobody questions that shoes are good. It just, nobody questions it. All of that stuff comes from somewhere. And that is consciousness seeking advantage. It wants to be the strongest it can be. It will notice over time and embed behavior into a society that replicates itself. Think about that. We have a judicial system that we weren't born with. Think about that. It was alive and active and created and formed and molded, and it had experience and age and corruption and bad perception and noble benefits and good intentions and everything, all of that mixed together into one giant creature now that is far more complicated than it was when it began. But you were born into it and it was alive. And every interaction that has happened with that judicial system has spread into the population. And some of those interactions have been very positive. But a lot of good things happen in courtrooms. In fact, sometimes the courtroom is the place where the only good thing happens for something. And there's a lot of bad things that happen in courtrooms too, because people get it wrong. And they don't understand information the same way. And all 12 people trying to agree on anything is the best we can do when it comes to did a thing really happen. That's the best we can do. What do you 12 people think? Here's what we know. But if one of those 12 people can't see it, it's not good enough for it to be real. That's the judicial system. So that's alive, and it's got its own extension. And so the interactions that system has had with people have changed them. Some people have new life. Some people are bitter. Some people see injustice. Some people get angry. Some people turn into the prosecuting attorneys or defense attorneys. People choose different parts in this system based on their interactions with it. They mate with it and they feed it, and it feeds them, and they develop, and their influence into the people around them is felt, because that judge also has a life outside of the courtroom, and he has friends and family and nieces and daughters, and might have children who are raised with his values, and those values would go then into his children and parental teaching, at least at some degree. So my point is that his influence is influenced by his institution. And everybody agrees that. That's systemic racism. One version of that argument, I don't want to get off topic, but one version of that is that things evolve over time and it doesn't end well for everybody. Because for whatever reason, this system wanted to end there. because everybody who was out in it for themselves, this was the best they could do. So then you got to change something. You got to start over. People recognize that. We need to reform this. We need to change that. Well, maybe this thing's too broken. What if we forget that ever existed and put this thing there and try to fix all these problems and hope it doesn't go bad and watch it to make sure it doesn't. So we'll agree to some other rules around that say, well, look, if this obviously goes bad and all of us can look at each other and say, this isn't what we wanted, or maybe even two of us say that, then we just call the whole thing off right there and say, well, at least we tried. Or you say, well, what if we did this to fix that problem? Well, now you fix two problems that go in the direction of a problem you didn't have any solution for. To tell me that you're not two solutions better than when you started. It's not knowing that you need to start to fix things that's the problem. It's knowing when what you tried to fix something doesn't work and trying something else. That's where all the damage is done. So anyways, language of consciousness. All of this is consciousness talking to consciousness. Me talking to you creates a reaction. And to tie this back to the physics part of it, that's gravity, by the way. Whoever has the biggest consciousness, the biggest mass, creates a pull around them. And there's a reason for that. And it goes to what I just said about all the different responses. You had the answer. You were the dense box. You are the thing that contains the things. You behave in a way that shows you know when to fight because you want to, and you know when to fight because you don't want to. You know when to be curious and when to back off. You know when to be disgusted and when to power through it with good intentions. You know when to go after something and make it yours. You know when someone else is trying to go after something and make it theirs in a way that's not good. You behave in all of these ways. What are you? You are the thing that understands why you are what you are. And you become a source of curiosity and fear and desire, whatever else you want to put in there. Because you have the things that nobody else has. That's the mass. These dense objects that things spin around. Why do they spin around it? They want to be it. They want to understand it. There's something there. The attention is there. They're pulled in. And that's why bigger people in this circle can get followings. Jordan Peterson's a great example. He had 10 seconds of airtime for something that happened, and he knew what to say. He didn't roll over like everybody else. He had a good answer that made the person asking the question look like they were a bigot. They were. And in those 10 seconds, with that amount of coverage, nobody could let him go. And he became an influential speaker with an audience of millions. Because a large group of people got to hear what he had to say one time. Started all of it. And that is why, because he had mastered many of the things he talks about openly in his lectures. I learned a lot of this from his lectures. Where do our emotions come? He talked about it in different ways. He helped me make a lot of connections that I use as rules, because a lot of his rules were good. The way he understands the separation of chaos and order, for example, is very good. That's very close to the way I understand accidents now. His explanation of why the mind behaves the way it does chemically, the amygdala, he broke all that down. And then I started to see it had narrative components. And here's the thing, every one of these types of consciousness that you can learn, you can map over your existing ones and say, this is how it acts like physics. This is how it acts like a martial art. You can change this stuff on the fly because the stories are not what matters. The result of using the rules that the story tells is what matters. And then it becomes a game that those memory people use. I don't know if you know this, people who are competition memorizers, they will watch a string of numbers and they won't remember the numbers in order. That's too many things. They'll look at 4 letters and based on the shape of their letters, they'll transform that into a word. They will take that word and phonetically transform it into another word. And then they will tell a disjointed story with the words they have made up. So they remember the story they tell, and then they can reverse engineer the words, the phonetic sounds, and the individual letters. So that's what you're doing when you map these individual consciousnesses over that, and you can do more of them at one time. Is you don't need the stories anymore. You just need the ideas. So you can summon them however you want. And that's where the rapid changing of axioms works. So if you want to know the true potential of being able to drop everything you believe, including all desire to believe it. But no desire to believe it is easy for me. They didn't have any desire. Hey, you know. So the ability to give up the axiom, that was beaten into me. So if you can pick it up and put it down, and then you can pick it up and put it down, and pick it up and put it down, you can have 100 perspectives in the time one person will still figure out why their one perspective doesn't make sense. Like, I just can't understand this. It's obvious that this is wrong. Obvious. Like, I can't make any sense of it. Look, this says it's wrong, this says it's wrong. And you come up with reasons and reasons, and you all come back to the same thing. It's wrong. And the other person says, well, this is obviously wrong. Think about it that way. No, it's still wrong, still wrong, still wrong, still wrong. Well, that guy told me that one. Oh, well, that's kind of weird. Well, I guess it makes sense if you think about it that way. And then it's not wrong anymore. The only difference between the two people, it doesn't take a lot of time to know something's wrong. That's the fastest system in your body. It's 3 neurons. Like, that's as quick as it gets. So everybody knows when something is wrong. It's how much recovery time do you need to go through the 5 stages of grief before you can try again? And if the answer is never, then you're just going to try the same thing over and over again. That's how you get trapped in those circular thought patterns. So anyways, that's, I guess, my time today. We covered a lot of different things that relate to the language of consciousness. If I had to sum it all up in one word, or one just little collection of sentences, I would say that consciousness is best imagined as a map of potential perspective, potential choices, potential stable choices, potential stable logical choices. They make sense. They connect back. Okay. There's a network of that. Every person who's ever alive makes that network. And the people who power that network are the people who get it right. And the people who are smarter get it right more. That's how it determines the size of the map. The smartest people make the map the biggest. The biggest parts of the map are the parts of the map everybody shares. If I had to guess at the shape of the map, it would have something close to 12 spikes, very closely mimicking the Jungian archetypes, the different narrative archetypes. It's pretty much a condensation of what types of stories a person will tell themselves based on their initial starting conditions of perspective. Some people will think this is important. Some people will want to be pirates. Some people will want to be astronauts. Some people will want to be military commanders. I want to be Han Solo. I want to be Luke Skywalker. I want to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator. Hell, maybe you want to be the T-1000 just because you like to blow things up and stab people and get shot a bunch of times and be fine. But the point is, there's different repeating patterns that people are likely to follow when they have their perspective. So that's good because that means the map makes sense and you can use it. And I can tell you, as someone who travels this map quite a bit, yes, as long as you can tell the right story, the paths don't change. The characters change. The words change. The names change. But the perspective is always the same. You just have to figure out how to put it there. So anyways, that's all I got for today. I don't remember what the next lecture is supposed to be, but I'll figure it out in a minute now. So thanks.
I was just about to say it's around 4:30 to keep you more time conscious. Yeah, it all sounded good. I feel like I could bullet point this real easy.
Oh, that was more of just a general statement. I was expecting a bullet pointed. No, you're fine. No, I don't need one. I didn't want to deny you that if you had it.
So I was in Joseph with the chat for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And science says we can't listen to two things at the same time. And it probably says I can't, you know, interact with you and interact with them on the same time. And I just switched really fast. But what I was picking up from you sounded like it was easy to pick up. Like, I know your speech, I know your tone, I know your messages.
That was some pretty sweet unintentional audio mixing there with your computer lag.
And so when I heard things I didn't.
Ultimate dramatic pause. There you go. Hi kids, stop streaming Netflix. Almost done. Yeah, I didn't pay attention to any of the chat. I don't know if it saves the chat.
I was listening to you and reading the chats.
Oh man, there's a lot here.
Yeah, there's 99.
How do is there a way to like download it? Can I download the chat? Save chat, yeah, I can. Good, chat saved. Going forward. Awesome. So now I can save that. So yeah, now this chat actually turns into like a side compendium. So I'll make a note here. Chat log.
Got a lot of good stuff.
03. So Tony, I can save the chat.
The chat is kind of a micro thread.
Yeah, it's just
it branched off of some things. I'm not pressed about saving the chat. If you'd like to, or you know, you should read through it. You probably have stuff to contribute.
Well, no, but, if I can see what sparked which direction, you just gave me like 200 data points of things you guys think are true. So I could read that. Musashi, the author of the Book of Five Rings, he has a quote that I will leave you guys with. It is from one thing, no 10,000 things. When your axioms can change, that is a very true statement. So the chat logs are valuable to one who can read them with as many perspectives as they can imagine.
Got it.
And I guess the only unifying factor is, what does one of these have to do with the other, and kind of link them together? That's what I'll be trying to figure out anyways.
Yep, that's where I'm at most of the time.
All right, thanks for coming. I'll see you next time.
See you guys next week. See you all in the chat.
All right.